A massive weather pattern reversal is coming to North America within the next 7 days. And if you're living east of the Rockies, you need to pay attention, because this isn't just another weather change. This is a complete atmospheric restructuring that's going to flip your forecast upside down, bring severe storms to regions that haven't seen them in weeks, and even give us a front row seat to a rare solar eclipse happening right in the middle of all this chaos. I'm tracking the latest model data, and what we're seeing is nothing short of extraordinary. The heat that's been absolutely relentless across much of the continent is about to get violently displaced by a completely different weather regime. And the timing, the magnitude, and the consequences of this shift are going to reshape the next 2 weeks of your forecast in ways that most people won't see coming. This isn't a subtle transition either. We're talking about a dramatic repositioning of the jet stream, a collapse of the dominant high-pressure ridge that's been anchoring the heat, and a complete flip in how atmospheric energy is distributed across the hemisphere. So stick with me as I break down exactly what's happening, where the biggest impacts are going to hit, when you need to be most alert, and how to prepare for what's about to unfold in one of the most significant weather shifts we're going to see all summer. Right now, we're sitting in a weather pattern that's been dominated by a massive high pressure ridge positioned across the western United States and extending into the southwestern corner of the continent. This ridge has been pumping heat like a furnace for weeks, and temperatures across the southwest have been consistently exceeding 100 degrees, with some areas pushing past 115 degrees. Phoenix has seen multiple days exceeding 110, Tucson has been regularly hitting 105, and even coastal California has experienced inland heat records. The Pacific North American pattern, or what we call the PNA, has been locked into a strongly positive phase, which means that upper-level high pressure is sitting right over the western U.S. while troughing, or dipping, is occurring in the eastern Pacific. This configuration is textbook for West Coast heat dominance, and it's been nearly impossible to break. The heat just keeps reinforcing every single day because that ridge continues to build and shift, pushing the hottest air mass directly over the south central and southwestern regions. The south central states, from Texas through Oklahoma to New Mexico, have been trapped under this same ridge, with daily highs consistently in the mid to upper 90s and some locations regularly approaching 105 degrees. Meanwhile, cooler air has been locked up over the northern tier of the country and Canada, creating a stark divide across the continent. But here's where things get interesting, and this is where every meteorological model is in unusual agreement. The PNA pattern is trending toward neutral and then potentially into negative territory as we progress through mid-August and beyond. What that means in real terms is that the jet stream configuration that's been propping up this western ridge is about to collapse dramatically. The atmospheric steering pattern is going to flip, and when that happens, cold fronts are going to have a clear pathway to dive much deeper into the eastern and central United States than they have been able to do for the last several weeks. The mechanism driving this change is directly tied to what we're seeing in the tropical Pacific, and understanding this is actually crucial to understanding why this pattern change is happening now and why the models are so confident about it. We're currently dealing with moderate El Niño conditions, with sea surface temperature anomalies in the Niño 3.4 region sitting at about 1.3 degrees Celsius above normal. This is a significant El Niño signal, and it's been influencing weather patterns across the entire northern hemisphere for the last several months. El Niño has a well-documented effect on mid-latitude weather patterns, especially during summer months when tropical Pacific convection can launch Rossby waves into the mid-latitudes. These atmospheric waves essentially ripple northward from the tropics and disrupt the established mid-latitude patterns, which is exactly what's about to happen here. The combination of warm tropical waters and the positioning of convection is going to fundamentally alter how energy propagates through the atmosphere. The Madden-Julian Oscillation, which is another crucial component of the global weather picture, has been stalled over the western Pacific, but is expected to show some activity again before gradually disorganizing as we move through early August. When the MJO weakens or disorganizes, it can actually destructively interfere with the El Niño signal, which may be part of what's allowing this pattern change to happen right now. The models are showing that as the MJO weakens toward the middle of next week, the forcing for this pattern shift is going to increase dramatically. Combine all of that with a trending Arctic oscillation that's moving from neutral toward negative, and you've got a perfect recipe for the jet stream to take a dramatic dip southward. The Arctic oscillation drives where the polar jet stream sits relative to its climatological average. When the AO is positive, the jet stays farther north, and Arctic air is essentially locked over the Arctic. But when it trends negative, the JE T stream shifts toward the equator, and that means cold air masses can penetrate much deeper into the mid-latitudes, which is exactly the scenario we're watching develop over the next 7 to 10 days. The forecast models from NOAA, the National Weather Service, and the broader meteorological community are all showing this negative AO trend accelerating through the middle and end of next week. Let me paint you a picture of what this looks like on the actual forecast maps. Early August, right now through the middle of the next few days, we still have that stubborn ridge dominating the western United States. You're going to see afternoon highs remaining in the low 90s to low 100s across the Pacific Northwest, and absolutely brutal heat in excess of 105 to 115 degrees across the Southwest, including Arizona, New Mexico, and into Southern California. The South Central U.S., which includes parts of Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas, will also remain extremely hot with temperatures in the upper 90s to low 100s. This is still that classic August heat pattern where the heat stays reinforced every single day because the upper level ridge is still firmly in place. But the jet stream is beginning to show the first signs of weakening. By the time we get to around Friday and Saturday of this week, the first weak upper level disturbance is going to approach from the northwest. And this is where we start to see the first significant weather development in regions that have been relatively quiet. The first upper level low is going to sweep across the Great Lakes region, and this is going to create a focus point for atmospheric lift and instability. Ahead of this system, we're going to see a wind shear profile that becomes increasingly favorable for storm development, especially across the northeastern United States and the mid-Atlantic region. This weekend into early next week is when things really start to change dramatically. A more substantial upper level trough is going to dig down the eastern side of the Rocky Mountains, and this is going to bring with it a cold front that's going to be much more significant than what we typically see in mid-August. This front is going to sweep from the Central Plains all the way into the eastern United States, and as it does, it's going to create a boundary along which severe thunderstorms are going to develop. The atmospheric ingredients for severe weather are going to be in place across multiple regions simultaneously. You're going to have warm, moist air ahead of the front, cooler, drier air behind it, and tremendous wind shear at upper levels as that jet stream continues to dig southward. This is going to be the classic setup for organized severe weather with strong to severe thunderstorms likely. The models are showing that the best severe weather threat is actually going to occur across the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, and the Mid-Atlantic region, where a potent shortwave of upper-level energy is going to sweep across on Sunday and into early Monday. This shortwave is essentially a disturbance in the upper atmosphere that's going to create rising motion and instability directly over this region. Damaging winds are going to be the primary threat, with some models showing gusts potentially exceeding 60 miles per hour in the most intense supercell updrafts. The strongest winds are likely to occur in areas that have the most organized storm structure, particularly within cells that are near the forward edge of the storm system. Hail is also going to be a significant concern, especially in a corridor from central Illinois, eastward through Indiana, Ohio, and into western Pennsylvania. Large hail, in some cases exceeding 1.5 to 2 inches in diameter, is definitely possible. Some of the strongest updrafts could potentially produce hail even larger than that. There's also going to be a low to moderate tornado threat, especially closer to where that upper level low is positioned, which is likely to be somewhere around northern Pennsylvania and upstate New York on Sunday afternoon. The tornado threat, while not the primary concern, shouldn't be completely dismissed. Any rotating supercells that develop in this environment could potentially produce tornadoes, especially in the higher instability zones closer to the upper level low center. As we progress into Monday and Tuesday of next week, that severe weather threat is actually going to intensify even further in many locations. The atmosphere is going to be even more unstable because the cold front is going to be moving into air that's still quite warm and moist ahead of it. The best chance for strong to severe storms on Monday is going to be from the mid-Atlantic northeastward. So that includes areas like eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, and New England. This is going to be the focus of the most significant impact from the system. The primary threats Monday will remain damaging winds and heavy rainfall. Some of these storms are going to produce rainfall rates that could exceed 2 inches per hour in localized areas, and that's going to set up a flash flooding threat, especially in areas with poor drainage or that have already received above average rainfall during July and early August. The Northeast has actually been one of the wettest regions in the country over the past several weeks, with some cities like Boston recording more than 3 times their normal monthly rainfall. Adding another round of heavy rain on top of that is definitely going to increase flooding concerns. By Tuesday, that system is going to be exiting offshore, but the atmospheric pattern is going to remain favorable for additional rounds of showers and thunderstorms across much of the Northeast and Great Lakes region throughout the rest of the week. The jet stream is going to be positioned directly over the Northeast, acting as a conveyor belt for storm systems and upper-level disturbances. This is going to be one of the most active and significant weather periods for the Northeast since early summer, with the potential for considerable rainfall accumulation and significant impacts across the region. Now, while all of this severe weather is unfolding across the eastern half of the country, something very different is happening in the west and southwest. That ridge is still there, and it's actually still building in some locations, even as the eastern ridge collapses. The heat is going to remain relentless across the southwest and south central regions. We're talking about highs that are going to remain in the low to mid 100s across much of Arizona, southern New Mexico, and southern California. West Texas is going to see similar heat, with temperatures approaching 110 to 115 degrees, which is pretty typical for this time of year. The southwest monsoon is going to continue to provide occasional thunderstorm chances across Arizona and New Mexico, and some of these storms are going to produce 1 to 2 inches of rainfall across parts of southern Arizona. The monsoon activity is actually going to be a welcome relief from the oppressive heat, bringing some moisture and occasional breaks from the relentless sun. But overall, the southwest is going to remain hot and occasionally wet, while the eastern half of the country transitions into a completely different pattern. This divided pattern is actually one of the most notable features of this forecast, and one of the most important things to understand. You're essentially going to have two entirely different weather systems operating simultaneously across North America. The west is going to be dealing with continued heat and occasional monsoon activity, while the east is going to be dealing with severe weather, cooler temperatures, and significant rainfall. This kind of dramatically split pattern doesn't happen every year. It's a hallmark of the kind of major pattern changes that we're forecasting. The jet stream is essentially going to split into two branches, with one branch supporting continued ridging over the west, and another branch diving southward over the east. As we push through midweek and into the latter part of next week, the pattern is going to settle into what we call a cold front carousel pattern, where cold fronts are going to keep marching through the central and eastern United States repeatedly. The heat ridge is still going to be hanging tough in the southwest, but now there's going to be a clear split. The jet stream is going to remain positioned across the northern tier of the country, dipping down into the mid-south, but the frontal systems are going to have an easier time penetrating southeastward compared to what we've been seeing. This means that every night, cooler air is going to settle in across the central and eastern United States. Morning temperatures are going to drop into the 50s and 60s across the Great Lakes and Northeast, which is going to be a welcome relief after the heat of July. But then every afternoon, the heat is going to return. High temperatures are going to climb back into the 80s and 90s across much of the eastern United States, with highs remaining in the low 100s across the south central region and the southwest. This is going to be the pattern throughout the rest of August. Every single day there's going to be this oscillation between cooler mornings and warm afternoons, but the overall trend is that the extremes are going to moderate. Instead of record heat day after day, we're going to see more of an average August pattern where heat rebounding is offset by the repeated cooling in the mornings. The atmospheric models are showing remarkable consistency with this scenario. The GFS, the European model, the Canadian model, and even the ensemble means are all in agreement that this pattern change is coming and that it's going to be significant. The only disagreement between the models is in the exact timing of when the coldest air arrives and how deep the jet stream actually dips. But there's very strong consensus that the overall direction of the pattern is southwestward for the jet and eastward for the frontal systems. This level of model agreement is actually quite unusual and suggests high confidence in the broader forecast signal. We're not looking at some fringe scenario or a model disagreement that might fade away. This is something that's really going to happen, and the impacts are going to be felt from coast to coast. Speaking of impacts, let me give you a region-by-region breakdown of what you can actually expect. If you're in the southwest, you're going to remain hot through the end of August. Arizona and New Mexico will see continued summer monsoon activity with occasional strong storms, 1 to 2 inches of rainfall possible in some locations, and temperatures generally staying above 100 degrees. It's going to be a very typical late August pattern for that region. If you're in the south central United States, including Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana, you're going to experience the most dramatic temperature swings. Right now, you're in the middle of the heat ridge with temperatures in the low 100s. But as the front moves through around Sunday and Monday, you're going to see a rapid cool down. Morning lows are going to drop from the mid-70s to the low 60s or even upper 50s behind the front. That's going to feel like early fall after what you've been experiencing, but the heat is going to return quickly. By midweek, afternoon highs are going to rebound back into the 90s, and the pattern is going to become this daily oscillation of cooler mornings and warm afternoons that's going to repeat throughout the rest of the month. If you're in the Central Plains, including Kansas, Nebraska, Colorado, and the Oklahoma Panhandle, you're going to see limited rainfall through August. The forecast is calling for below average precipitation across this region because the overall storm track is going to remain farther to the east and north. You might see some activity associated with the monsoon extension on the southern edge near the Texas panhandle, but overall, you're looking at a drier August. The central U.S. corridor from Iowa through Missouri and southern Illinois is going to see the best rainfall chances, with 1 to 2 inches of rain falling as these frontal systems move through. Some of this rainfall is going to be heavy, especially on Sunday into Monday, so there could be some localized flash flooding. Issues in areas with poor drainage. If you're in the Great Lakes region, which includes Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and northern Illinois, you're going to be in the thick of this pattern change. You're going to see the most active severe weather on Sunday and Monday, with damaging wind gusts the primary threat. Temperatures are going to cool significantly behind the cold front, with highs on Monday morning dropping into the low 70s or even 60s in some locations. But then the pattern is going to moderate by midweek, and you're going to settle into cooler than normal temperatures for the rest of August, which is going to be a refreshing change. The Mid-Atlantic and Northeast are going to experience the most significant impacts from this weather pattern change. You're looking at the best severe weather threat, with multiple rounds of strong to severe thunderstorms possible from Friday through Tuesday. Damaging winds, large hail, flash flooding, and isolated tornadoes are all going to be on the menu. The rainfall is going to add up significantly across this region, with some areas receiving 2 to 3 inches or more of rain over the course of several days. This is going to contribute to above average rainfall for August across much of the Northeast. Temperatures are also going to remain cooler than normal throughout this period, with highs in the 70s and 80s compared to the typical 90s that you'd normally see in mid-August. This cooler pattern could potentially persist well into late August, making it one of the longest stretches of below-average temperatures in August that the Northeast has experienced since 2017. And finally, if you're in the Southeast, including the Carolinas, Georgia, Florida, and Louisiana, you're going to see a mixed bag. Some parts of the Southeast will remain quite warm, especially the southern portions, while other parts will experience some cooler air filtering down behind the frontal boundary. The primary threat from this pattern change is going to be rainfall, with significant rain chances across parts of the Southeast, and especially Florida, from Sunday through Tuesday. 1 to 2 inches of rainfall is going to be common, and some areas could see even more. The coastal areas are going to see heavier rainfall potential as moisture gets focused along the Atlantic and Gulf coasts. Now, there's one more element to this forecast that makes this week absolutely extraordinary, and that's the partial solar eclipse that's going to occur on August 12th. This is going to be happening right in the middle of this massive weather pattern change, which is going to create some truly unique circumstances. The path of totality for this eclipse is going to cross through Greenland, Iceland, and northern Spain, but North America is going to experience a partial eclipse. In the northern contiguous United States, the eclipse is going to begin around midday on August 12th and linger into the mid-afternoon for those farther east. For observers in Alaska, the coverage is going to be more significant, with roughly 40% of the sun covered by the moon at the peak of the eclipse. In the lower 48 states, the coverage is going to be much less, with coverage generally less than 10% across most of the continental United States. However, in the Northeast, and especially in Maine and the Atlantic coastal regions, the eclipse is going to be slightly more visible, with potentially up to 15% of the sun covered by the moon. The greatest opportunity to observe this eclipse from North America is actually going to be from Atlantic Canada, where roughly 50% of the sun is going to be covered by the moon at the peak of the eclipse. If you do plan to observe this eclipse, it's absolutely critical that you use proper eclipse glasses or a safe solar filter. You should never look directly at the sun without proper eye protection. If you want to observe the eclipse safely without glasses, you can use a pinhole projector or project the sun's image through a telescope or binoculars onto a surface. The eclipse is going to last from approximately 7:34 a.m. Alaska Daylight Time in the western coastal areas of Alaska all the way through to 2:52 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time in the ES Northeast. So depending on where you are in North America, your local eclipse timing is going to be different. This is going to be the only total solar eclipse visible from Earth in 2026, with totality occurring only in Spain, Iceland, and Greenland. For North Americans, it's going to be a partial eclipse, but it's still going to be a special astronomical event to witness. The interesting timing here is that the eclipse is going to occur right on August 12th, which is going to be Monday or Tuesday, depending on your time zone. And that's right when this severe weather pattern is going to be transitioning and potentially still producing strong thunderstorms across parts of the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. So if you're in the Northeast hoping to observe the eclipse, you might actually find yourself dealing with cloudy skies from those storm systems. If you're anywhere farther west or south, you're going to have a better chance of clear skies, because the severe weather threat is going to be shifting offshore. The National Weather Service and various astronomy organizations are going to be providing updates on which areas are going to have the best viewing conditions, and I'd recommend checking those forecasts closer to the event if you're planning to observe it. So let me wrap up the complete picture here. Over the next 7 days, North America is going to undergo a dramatic weather pattern reversal. That's going to be one of the most significant shifts we see all season. The jet stream is going to shift from a configuration that's been supporting western heat dominance to a configuration that's going to allow cold fronts and the polar jet to dive deep into the central and eastern United States. The heat ridge that's been positioned over the southwest is going to persist and even strengthen slightly, but it's going to disconnect from the eastern United States. This disconnect is crucial. This is going to create a divided pattern where the west remains hot while the east transitions into a significant across much of the eastern United States, with 1 to 2 inches being common and some areas potentially seeing even more. Temperatures are going to cool significantly across the central and eastern United States, with the most dramatic drops occurring on Monday and Tuesday as the cold front moves through. By midweek and into late August, we're going to settle into a pattern where the jet stream remains positioned across the northern tier, creating what we call a cold front carousel, where fronts keep pushing through and creating daily cycles of cooler mornings followed by warm afternoons. The southwest is going to continue to experience summer monsoon activity and heat. The plains are going to remain drier than normal, and the east is going to remain much more active and cooler than normal through the end of the month. All of this is backed up by strong model consensus. The GFS, the European model, the Canadian model, and ensemble guidance are all pointing toward the same solution, which is rare and speaks to the high confidence we should have in this forecast. The only variations between models are going to be in the exact timing and intensity of specific features, but the broad strokes of the forecast, the pattern change, the cold front activity, and what kind of viewing conditions you might have, because if this weather pattern plays out as expected, you might find yourself dealing with some cloud cover depending on your exact location. This is going to be an incredibly active and interesting period of weather for North America, and I'll be tracking every update as this pattern change unfolds. Stay safe, stay weather aware, and I'll see you back here soon with the latest on this developing story.